Glogg gals.
Glogg gals. You gotta say it. You have to say Glogg gals.
I'm not part of the Glogg gals.
You are now.
Yeah, you are.
You're a Glogg gal for the day, so say Glogg gals.
Glogg gals.
Glogg gals.
Glogg gals.
Intro.
Glogg.
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 Yeah. Glogg.
Glogg. Are we gonna get copyrighted for this?
Probably.
Okay. Welcome to the Glogg special guest of the day, Grace. Give it up for Grace.
Me. Cheer sounds.
Grace doesn't necessarily want to be involved in the Glogg, but we have thoughts on Nymphomaniac.
Glogg gals.
Glogg gals. Okay, so essentially this woman shows up at in an alleyway, and this guy's like, let me help you. He takes her into his house, and then she tells him the origins of her nymphomania. Mania, is that the right term? And yeah, it goes into vivid detail of her sex life throughout her entire life. Lots of meta moments, I'd say.
Yeah.
Lots of deep analysis and thought going on.
Yeah.
Anything to add to that summary?
This movie hits everything from misogyny to Jesus to music theory.
True.
To mathematics to philosophy. This movie's all over the place.
Yeah.
I would also like to mention parts of it are very difficult to sit through.
Yes. If you're
The sexy parts?
Like the very kinky parts.
Yeah, the very kinky parts are a little bit much.
Yeah, I would, a warning to anyone who hasn't seen this movie and would like to, trigger warning? Yeah, trigger warning, because there's a lot of sex and a lot of rough sex, specifically in the second film. Yeah, lots of violence.
Yeah.
But other than that, wonderful film. Lots to take from it.
Yeah.
Where shall we start? I have many thoughts, and I don't know which is the best one to start with. Okay, this one's very basic and simple because a lot of these thoughts get really deep at some point. First one, let's just say, my question is she mentally ill or is she in the right? We briefly touched on this last night.
You know, I think it's really up to the viewer.
Yeah.
I choose to believe that she's a holy figure.
I find that really interesting. She says a lot of off-putting things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like she flew.
She did fly, but is that psychosis?
She was also a child when that happened. Children have big imaginations.
I think she's a holy figure. I'm boots down.
Talk to us more about how she's a holy figure.
'Cause, you know, like, she's so attuned to spirituality throughout the film.
Okay.
I feel like
Even though she's not saying it.
I would argue that it's more she's talking about religion more than spirituality, because I feel like the way that I saw the movie, she never really set foot into true spiritual belief. It was just religious belief that she already knew existed, that she kind of put herself away from. But at the same time, the whole time she's talking about how she's a bad person and how she cannot be this good holy figure. So what do you think about that?
Because she has this, personal connection with her body that no one else understands. And then she is regarded as, the other famous nymphomaniacs in history that are holy figures in some way.
What is a holy figure, then? How do the whore Babylon and the other woman, I can't remember, they are holy figures in their own reserved right because of their stories. How does her story make her a holy figure? Because in her story, she's basically just admitting that she's hurt a lot of people and then herself. And then she's just trying to survive by the end of the movie.
Because I think she's I think in the conclusion of the film, she argues that she is a bad person, but it's only by proxy because she's only ever attempted to seek out her own pleasure because she's more attuned to do that than other people are. And it's really only society's fault that people are hurt by her actions. More or less.
Mm-hmm.
Because she never hurts people on purpose.
Intentionally.
Yeah, she never hurts anyone intentionally. But she is more attuned to, like, her body and sex in a way that is spiritual. Like, she talks about it like it's spiritual.
But does that make her a holy figure just because she's in touch with her spirituality?
I mean, holy figures are sort of subjective.
Yeah, but you could argue that any of us are holy figures because of the ways in which we're in touch with our spiritualities that differ from other people, that other people might not fully understand and might learn from. Such as she is.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
No, I really like that you're arguing that she's a holy figure. I'm just trying to understand what makes a holy figure in your eyes in that case. Because the way that I watched the movie, I must have seen it, like, through obviously we're all going to see it a little bit differently, but I'm really curious to hear, like, I feel like you just talked about the parallels between the other two figures and to her being the holy figure, and then you talked a little bit more about her spirituality with her feeling her body and, like, being in tune with that, almost having, like, superpowers because of it, right?
Yeah.
Is that what you mean by, like, spiritual? She's just, like, really in tune with that.
Like, she is so in tune with her humanness in a way that every other human is not.
Mm-hmm.
And she's so in tune and grounded with it. Something that's so earthly, which sex is so earthly, but she experiences it in a way that's cosmic. That's like a superpower almost.
Yeah.
It's very, like, it's really vague.
When you put it like that, it makes it so much more devastating when she loses her orgasm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That makes a lot more sense.
But at what point is that her being in touch with her spirituality or just being a necrophiliac?
That's not a necrophilia.
No, my bad.
Okay, mortuary student.
Well, shit. I think about dead people all day. What do you expect? Not like that, though. Not like that.
Okay, sip the wine.
Okay, yeah. One break. At what point is it her in touch with her spirituality rather than her just being a nymphomaniac? Because, like, may I use you as an example? Mm-hmm. You oftentimes you have spiritual connections that I don't fully understand at times, and I think that's really interesting. But, like, sometimes you phrase your spirituality like you are even aware of it, that it could be mental health issues rather than just spirituality.
Yeah.
So where is that line with her?
That's it. I can't really argue definitively that she's one way or another because I think that's part of why the film is so good. It leaves it up to enough subjective view that you can have your own opinion on it.
Yeah.
But in my first viewing and every viewing of the film, I always come to the same conclusion. And I think that's just representative of, like, my life.
Okay.
So I come to the table with different tools. So I leave the table with a different type of birdhouse.
That makes sense. Would you like to hear my next point?
I would.
Well, this goes into, like, the spiritual question, I guess. Throughout the whole movie, men are treating her like shit. At the very beginning of the movie, I was really turned off from watching it because I was like, men are just terrible and I don't want to watch them be terrible more. But she's aware of their actions, like hyper aware of how men are treating her, and she is taking advantage of that. So men think they have the upper hand the whole time when really she does.
But also the stuff about the Fibonacci sequence, because at the very end of the movie, the man, Jerome, turns around and does the same thing that he did to her friend, or what was her name? Yeah, I can't remember her name. P?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what I pulled from the end of the movie was that she is smart. She has the upper hand almost all of the time. I think that it tried to pose Jerome as, like, her almost match, almost equal, and it only showed a glimmer of it in that scene where he beat her and then left her. And I thought that was so interesting, because you just have this whole movie where I feel like, in my eyes at least, this woman is telling her story as if she is the reciting, I guess. She's like on top of everything. She's got almost everything under control, but it also goes out of her hands sometimes. But I think that last scene was the only scene I ever saw where I felt like she was just backed into a corner and couldn't get out.
Yeah.
You know, I would say every other scenario she had a way out, except for that last one.
True.
Yeah. There's really only 2 scenes in the whole movie where she isn't in control. Mm-hmm. She's not puppeteering other people's behaviors.
Yeah.
Which would be like Jerome beating her up and then Seligman being nasty.
Yeah. But it makes that moment with Seligman even more devastating, because he sat through her entire life story, and then here's at the very end of it the one moment when she's no longer in control and gets taken advantage of, it in the sense that she's just like beat up, and then he chooses to take advantage of her immediately after hearing that.
Yeah.
That's fucking foul.
Yeah.
And his last lines still sticks to the back of my head. I can't get it out of my head.
What were they?
He says, "But you fucked thousands of men." That
Yeah.
was his last words.
Throughout the whole movie, she's like telling this guy her story, and he's like relating everything. You can explain this part better to me.
Our main character is telling Seligman her story from everything that happened leading up to her being found by Seligman in the alley, starting from when she was a literal toddler.
Mm-hmm.
2 years old.
2 years old. And going on in time.
Yeah, but throughout their whole
he-
conversation. Sorry.
Yeah, so this movie is so fantastic because it's organized into, I think, 6 chapters. And every chapter has a different title that Seligman relates to something, or they work together to relate to something. Whether it be the Fibonacci sequence, or Bach's polyphony, or
Fly fishing.
fly fishing.
Yeah.
Forks.
Cake forks.
Yeah.
And that brings me into my point about the one scene where Fur Elise is playing. Because to me, that is the most like basic piano song. When you're first learning to play piano, that's probably what you're learning first as like a big accomplishment.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't feel much excitement when I hear that song. Anyone who can play that song, I'm like, yeah, you know how to play basic piano.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't remember exactly what was going on in the scene when that song was playing.
Oh, I do.
Okay,
So here's the thing. She and Jerome are married at the time, and Jerome is like, you need to start fucking other people because I can't keep up with you because you're a little tiger and the tiger needs to be fed extra, whatever. Mm-hmm. Weird. So she starts fucking other people, and she decides to become the piano teacher.
Oh, yes.
And she the whole theme with this chapter, I think, is she is practicing her knowledge of predictability in men and how easy it is to manipulate them by doing almost literally nothing. So she chooses the most predictable, or rather, the director, I think, chose the most predictable piece of music to
Yes.
act as a parallel between her actions of the soundtrack.
That's pretty much all I had to say about that.
I loved your explanation of that.
Thanks.
Very good. Very
Yeah,
nice.
I practice it.
Yeah.
I practice it in my head.
And it's like in this part of her life that's the most ordinary so far. Like she has a kid, she's married, or I think she's married.
Mm-hmm.
But she's living like a very American dream life in this moment, and then Fur Elise plays. The most basic fucking piano song. And it's like symbolizing how her life has mellowed out.
And I think it's also worth to mention that she probably knew going into this situation with catching the men on the street that they weren't going to be as observant or intelligent enough to notice that she's carrying for Elise with her.
Oh, I didn't know she was carrying it with her.
Yeah, she's holding it in her hand
Oh.
as all the men are lining up to fix her car.
Okay.
And like one of the guys comments on it and tries to say an intelligent thought, and she's like, totally.
Yeah.
And like she probably doesn't know shit about piano either.
Yeah.
Maybe it's also just like a lapse of thought on her part. Maybe she's just like, a piano song, I need to print one off, this is fine. But I I think it could work both ways.
Yeah, maybe there's no actual deeper meaning to that, but I found it there.
I like the meaning that you pulled from that scene. Thank you.
What I keep thinking about is later on in that chapter, Jerome and she have a big fight, and Jerome goes and drives on like a little piece of grass and is staring out onto the lake or something.
Yeah.
And the song is playing at the same time. And I still don't understand why they carried on the significance of that into that scene. What if we paused and rewatched that really fast?
BRB Glogg.
BRB. Glogg gals.
Glogg gals. Glogg back.
Glogg back.
Glogg back.
Okay.
Okay. I just read about for Elise that Beethoven never felt that piece was finished. He always felt like it was very... he felt like it wasn't a great song. He didn't like it very much. And so he never really released it. It got released like years after it was actually made.
Really?
Yeah. And so that makes me think about that scene a little more where he's staring despondently out into the lake, like feeling as if life is not complete, though it should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Might be a little far-fetched, but I don't know.
I don't know. We'll just have to ask Lars von Trier, I guess.
Yeah.
He'll know.
Would you like to hear more?
Yeah.
The entire backstory is seen through Seligman's eyes. Mm-hmm. And once you told me that, like halfway through the first film, I started totally viewing that movie differently. Mm-hmm. And in the second film, when the actress changes, it's very sudden. Just like throughout the whole backstory, I'm just saying this for the gloggers, her flashbacks are played by a young woman who isn't the lady that's narrating. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly the flashbacks turn into the narrator as the actress in the flashbacks. So why? What sparked that change in Seligman's mind's eye?
Did she drop a date? A time reference? Whenever that happened in her story?
It was in the same chapter as for Elise.
Yes. It's after she has the baby. He suddenly starts viewing her as an older woman.
It's
her current her.
Specifically after the shot where Shia LaBeouf is staring into the water.
Yes.
Because he's sad. And I can't help but wonder if Seligman is like choosing not to see this like very youthful and innocent looking woman anymore.
Maybe it's because he just heard her whole story and he doesn't view her as so innocent anymore. Maybe he starts to look at her like she's older than she is, just because she's lived such a rich life.
Yeah, I think that sums it up.
That definitely makes sense of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, another thought. Okay, here's my yes and no but moment that I brought up last night, and I want to hear Grace's thoughts about this too. Okay, but it's common in improv to say no. Don't say no. Say yes and. Mm-hmm. And I've heard other improvers say like a fun way to mix up improv is saying no, but yeah, the first movie can be attributed, like her story directly relates to yes and, because like Seligman seems almost curious about more and she's like yes and then this, but in the second film
she's a lot more reluctant to give information.
Yes,
for sure.
Yes,
he has to pry it out of her a little bit more,
yeah, because her story starts getting like more and more fucked up. So like he's relating parts of her story in the second film, and it's more of a no but answer on her part rather than a yes and.
I think it's that she stops relating to him.
She does.
I think she realizes that something's off in this man sometime between the first movie and the second movie, and that's what sparks her change in telling her story.
Yeah.
It's also
because she's so perceptive. The whole movie talks about how she's very smart, she's very ahead of the men that she's with. Why wouldn't she be doing the same thing to Seligman?
Yeah.
In like the first 15 minutes of the second part, she's talking to Seligman about how he doesn't get excited from her stories. Mm-hmm. And then she comes to find out that he's a virgin. And I think that might play a role in her being able to relate to him.
Because she's trying to be, like... You said this last night. You said that she came to the conclusion that, like, after her life of, you know, being a nymphomaniac, she decides at the end of the movie that she's not going to have sex anymore. Would that tie into that as well?
Yeah. I think she was looking around the room, right? And she says to Seligman at some point that I think it's a loose quote, I'm paraphrasing, but she says, like, because the way that you live like a monk with all of your trinkets and things, that you truly are the happy one. Something like that, along those lines.
I remember that line, yeah. You said this. You said that she calls him a monk, like, 3 times in the movie. I can't remember her saying that in the movie. I feel like it's very implied through more of the objects in the rooms and the scenery and the way that Seligman is very soft-spoken as well.
Yeah.
They're both soft-spoken, I would say. I think that the hints that he's trying to be something that at the end of the movie you find out he's not really is just very much surface level on everything. And I think maybe that could be another factor of why in the second movie her tone changes, because she realizes it's an act. Or less of an act, more just she sees through it a little bit more.
She sees that he's a man at the end of it all. I thought it was really interesting that, like, the whole film, obviously it's her telling a story, but she doesn't know anything about him really.
Yeah.
Except, like, I have to think, because of how smart she is, that she is psychoanalyzing him the whole time based on his responses, and how he's conversing with her. But, like, at what point does she pick up that he is just a man like everyone else? Or does she not even really realize that until the last scene?
I feel like it's a give and take. I don't know. Whenever I converse with people, sometimes I get information and then I'll lead into something because I have that piece of information, then I'll realize that it's wrong. Or I didn't get something right. And then I'll come back and I'll back off. I feel like whenever I was watching them converse in the movie, it was similar. It was a give and take. She was trying to get things out of him without really directly asking. And she was just giving everything to him every time, every point. And I think that maybe, like, that was just a part of her figuring it out.
Yeah.
Because it was subtle, and then it was all at once. Like you said, like the yes and versus the no but.
Yeah.
I think also she's kind of growing to understand him more. So she's feeling more comfortable on, like, a very basic level of communication. She's getting more comfortable with being able to say no. But also it's because in the second part it's a lot more serious.
Yeah.
The stakes are a lot higher in her story, and she's obviously upset at herself for her actions.
Yeah.
And so she keeps trying to argue to him that she's a bad person, and he says, no, you're not. So I think that she kind of grows to just be short with him.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, it's a lot of different reasons why she goes to no but instead.
She does get very short with him at the end, I noticed. That's something that I picked up on while I was watching, but I couldn't really pinpoint how or where or why.
Yeah, she's a lot easier to shut him down when he's getting into these tangents of...
Even though before she just let him rant.
Yes.
She let him rant about the fishing thing until she finally shut it down. And then it was the Fibonacci sequence and the mathematics stuff. That was pretty cool. But she turned it away from there eventually, too.
Yeah, in the whole first movie, she is, like, we talked about this a little bit, how she is, like, very polite in responding to him relating her story to other things. She takes what he just said, paraphrases it almost, and then leads into her next part of the story, and attributes what he just said to this next part, and then back and forth like that, so on. But in the second movie, she is much easier, like...
Almost more abrasive.
Abrasive's the right word.
Definitely. I have something to say.
Yeah.
A conclusion that I came to a couple minutes ago. So, like, Seligman, she calls Seligman a monk a bunch of times. And I also realized, I mean, this is, like, really obvious, but, like, his room is littered in religious stuff.
He literally has a painting of, like, the Virgin Mary on his wall. Like, and he specifically says, I think it's Russian, from this specific guy. I
Yeah.
can't remember the name he gave, but he knew his shit.
And his room has like one small window with no light.
Yeah.
It's very monk-ish.
Mm-hmm. And the small bit of light that does peek through the window feels almost as if it's alluding to religion.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like the holy light. The light at the end of the tunnel, almost.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as I realized this about Seligman, he is a holy figure as well,
Mm-hmm.
or supposed to be, and I think that they are divine counterparts in that way, or I think they're supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
Like a yin and yang situation.
Yeah.
They're like opposite mirrors of each other.
So he's mostly good with a little bit of bad, and she's mostly bad with a little bit of good.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
I see that.
Because she never, yeah, exactly. Even down to the point where, like, she studied medicine and she talks about how she believes more in science than religion, even though she, in my opinion, is a deeply spiritual character.
Uh-huh.
I think she's spiritual without realizing it, though.
Yeah, because she's obviously attuned to something that, like, no one else can understand.
I would argue that she doesn't fully understand it either.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's part of it, I guess.
I think the whole movie is really her realizing things about herself. Like, she's coming to conclusions with the help of Seligman while giving her story. Because, I mean, based on her story, she's never told anyone all of this before. I am led to believe that she never has really sat down and thought about her entire life like that.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, she's very good at retelling the things. I almost feel like she knew what she was going to talk about, especially leading into it with the things that she found in his room to relate to.
Mm-hmm.
So I almost feel like she didn't give the full story. I feel like she only gave parts of her story that would relate to him.
Ooh, interesting.
Because, like, she had to tell it in a perspective where he would get it, understand it, but then he comes out of left field with this shit about fishing and mathematics.
Yeah.
And I can't even remember the shit he said in the second movie because she shut him down so many times, honestly.
Well, now a question to what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
Is she doing the same thing she has always done throughout her life to him? Is she manipulating him?
Definitely, but I think for the first time it's because she doesn't want to have sex with him.
Interesting.
I mean,
Totally.
she even, like, strongly proclaims that she's going to become celibate.
Yeah.
At the end.
Yeah.
Like, to him.
Yeah. What's your next point?
So my other points are more like deeper thoughts on movies in general.
All right, I have to pee before this one.
Okay, we're gonna pause while Megan pees.
Log out.
Log out. Seligman finding deeper meanings and truths within her story. Is this a sign of neurodivergency?
You could say so.
Yeah?
And you know what? I did some research today.
Okay.
did.
There's a symptom that's often found in various psychotic disorders / bipolar disorder / schizophrenia called clanging, which is when you relate one thing to something that's very, very different, but it makes sense in your head, but it might not immediately make sense to other people because it's like very, very vague and out there.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
And that movie is basically that whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a purposeful
It could be.
way? Yeah.
I think it's implied that it could be on purpose.
Could you also argue that they only do it in that style so it's more interesting as a movie script?
That too.
Because, like, how else do you make a movie script interesting unless it's building off of what the viewer already knows?
Yeah.
So you take two random characters, you throw them together, they don't know each other, the viewer doesn't know them. They have to start talking. What
Yeah.
do they talk about? There's things in the room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean,
Uh-huh.
it's also a good way to get to know Seligman as a character, even though the story's not about him.
Because it's his house.
Yeah. But, like, I found myself growing attached to him. Like, I thought he was a good person, and so that's why the end of the movie is such, like, a punch in the fucking face. But, yeah, that was really well done, and that, like, you get to see into his mind and how his mind works, how he's interpreting things.
I had a thought while I was watching the movie, at the end of the movie, whenever that happened. My thought was that he had no intention of doing anything to Joe or with Joe or like anything sexual of any kind until he heard about the pedophile story. Because his face fucking changed when he heard that story. I noticed it. I don't know if you guys noticed it too.
I did.
But it's like he heard that she took pity on the pedophile, and he asked her He asked her a lot of questions about it, actually, and he like questioned her morals about it a lot. We got to like see that side of it. But I think more of what that scene was suggesting was that he just saw an opening, rather than that.
Ooh.
That's the feeling that I got whenever I saw the look on his face. It looked like he just had a thought.
That's a really good point.
Oh, that's dark.
That's fucked up.
But it makes total
really
sense.
fucked up. But
Not saying that he himself's a pedophile, but he's seeing how she has sympathy for others.
Yeah.
intense empathy. A lot of
Yeah.
I don't want to say that he's a narcissist or anything, but from what I know from that typical thing is that it's a prey on empathy. I saw this thing and it was talking about how people who show empathy readily are more seen as like targets, I guess, for manipulation and things like that. Because once you see it's there, it's easy to play into it. And that's, whenever I saw that scene and I saw his face change like that, that's the first thing that came to mind, was just that he just caught information, you know?
Yeah.
But maybe she didn't know he wanted to know.
Like, he was thinking to himself, there's a person that's willing to have sex with even the most awful of people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So she'll have sex with me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, maybe he's not a virgin by choice.
Yeah.
I thought about that too whenever he said he was a virgin, and like her voice changed a little bit and like her tone changed a little bit whenever she heard that, but it, very quickly blew over that. But I thought almost the same thing, that something was going to happen right then and there, but then it got pushed back.
Yeah.
And I think that what happened was, by the time we reached the part in the story where she's talking about the pedophile, he realizes that this is an opportunity. Somewhere between the mentioning that he's a virgin and that event, I think, is what took him to decide what he was going to do at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
I have something radical to say.
Okay.
Yes.
So yesterday I was reading a thing. There was like some Twitter thread about how Christians are like, don't judge people, because, well, Jesus says don't judge people in the Bible. And I was reading a Twitter thread on how that in Christianity today that doesn't extend to basically anyone. But to further my argument on Joe being a holy figure, that's that. She defended that man who was a pedophile in a way that was non-judgmental.
Yeah.
And Seligman heavily disagreed with it, even though he's portrayed as a very monk-like person, and he's portrayed very PC.
He was very disgusted
Yeah.
at her.
He was
whenever
very
he heard
disgusted.
that.
Thursday, do you need help? I think you're doing it wrong, bro.
You got put on the table Thursday.
For the Glogg, Thursday's trying to pour wine from the wine box, but the wine box is broken. So now Thursday is balancing a wine glass on our sofa.
Thank you for narrating that experience.
Stressful.
Update, wine is in the cup, no wine spilled.
Yep.
Yet.
Success. Yeah, knock on wood. Anyway, should we get to our next point?
The last thought that I have written down is related to movies as a whole, and we touched on this last night. We as a society, at least, in the bubble that we live in, are constantly searching for movies that cause deeper thought, deeper analysis. And I find myself like constantly craving for movies that make me think, or else it's not necessarily a great film.
Right.
Is this a problem? Or is the problem in people who find silly, goofy movies to be the most pleasurable? Is that the issue? Like, are these silly, goofy, mindless films and forms of entertainment an issue because they are making people lose their thoughts?
They're critical thinking.
I have things to say.
Megan has things to
Go
say right
on.
now.
You are bringing up a point that is almost an exact parallel to who other than Joe and Seligman. Joe,
Oh.
who spends her life looking only for her own pleasures. Seligman, who spends his life celibate and looking for only things that bring him deeper thought and knowledge.
Ooh.
You are Seligman. In this situation.
I am not a man. I am not.
But you're saying you crave movies that bring you deeper thought.
I do. But that's not to say I don't enjoy all the fun, goofy shit.
Yeah.
I rarely see a film I don't enjoy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, what you just said is
Yes.
a very similar parallel to the movie that we're discussing.
Yeah. So, yeah, is anyone in the wrong there?
I mean, at the end of the day, people... Go on. At the end of the day, people want dopamine.
Yeah.
And so sometimes like I came home from school today and I turned on Big Time Rush. Because it floods my brain with dopamine every time I watch that show. Because it's a comfort show and it's silly and goofy and it makes me giggle. And I watch that show and I say, oh my god, this should be a TikTok viral sound.
And then you watched it for several hours until I got home.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But also, I love Nymphomaniac, and it's been one of my favorite movies since the day that I saw it. It like literally changed my life. To expand upon that on like society, I think that people in our age range, such as Gen Z and also millennials sometimes, we are starting to want movies that are deeper in thought. For example, I showed my parents The Lighthouse. Holy fuck.
They go right over their heads.
They hated it. They were like, that was so slow. That was so boring, Megan. That was... what even happened? And I was like, oh my god, like, it's the symbolism. It's the parallels.
Yes.
It's so intense and beautiful. And they were like, I didn't get it.
That reminds me, I tried to show my cousin one time. I went over to stay at her house, and I tried to show her Eternal Sunshine, the Spotless Mind. And she turned it off. What? She turned it off. She's like, Grace, this is the slowest movie I've ever seen. I'm like, you have to finish it.
She thinks that's a slow movie?
You have to finish it.
Show her the lighthouse.
Yeah, bro. Thursday, I have more things to say, but I need to pause it. Okay. Glogg gals.
Glogg gals. Okay, Glogg, we're back.
What was the thing you were saying right before you went to the bathroom?
What did I say?
I don't know. I can't remember.
We can re-record the podcast.
Okay, well, anyway, the point. Are brains too big?
Our brains too big.
That's my question. Are brains too big? As Kurt Vonnegut stated in his book from, I don't know when that book was written, I think maybe the 80s or 90s. But he brought up that point so early on.
Yeah.
I have to pull a quote from that book. I'm sorry, it just relates to this.
But I have the answer.
Yeah?
I have the answer now, but I can't say it because Thursday just ran out of the room to go grab a book.
Can I say something? Just
Yeah.
out of the blue, I just want to say something.
What?
It has always been a thing about people, a thing about humans, is that we always want to learn. That has been the only driving force that has, like, kept us alive for so many years. Right? Because it is like the human nature to want to learn things. If you think about animals, they learn things when they're younger, and then they use those things that they learned to keep them alive whenever they grow up. For people, it's a similar thing, except we have a lot more stimulation, much bigger brains, and so much more going on because we participate in a society actively at every waking moment. Yeah. I think that we just max our brains out all of the time.
Yes,
and that's
exactly.
the issue. I think that we have too much going on, and that's why the dumb, or what you were saying, like the silly goofy movies, that's the point for them, is because they bring on emotions.
Yes.
And it's hard to do that when you're constantly thinking about things. It's hard to feel when you're thinking.
And as Kurt Vonnegut so eloquently stated, so I raise this question, although there is nobody around to answer it, can it be doubted that 3-kilogram brains were once nearly fatal defects in the evolution of the human race?
Interesting.
Yeah?
Right?
Wait, he said the brain is too heavy?
Our brains weigh 3 kilograms.
Yeah.
He raises the question, is this a fatal defect? is the fact that our brains hold so much knowledge and are constantly craving knowledge, is that destroying the human race?
But humans aren't getting bigger heads.
No, it's
I
not.
have the answer.
Yes,
Yeah.
give us the answer.
So, our brains are too big. We're too far evolved. We're literally killing ourselves. In about 5 years' time, the Earth is basically apparently going to swallow itself up or whatever the fuck the scientists say. We're totally fucked. And we are stuck in a society trying to chase power because we're also not evolved enough to get over the fact that we need to chase power to fit in a society because we're still animals, but we can't find that line between being an evolved human and just being an animal seeking power and survival.
Yes.
However,
It's so blended
I have
together.
to believe, for my own peace of mind, that we are put on this planet spiritually or cosmically or whatever for this very reason.
Yeah.
To overcome this. So, in conclusion, Generation Z is traumatized and therefore searching for why in movies. However, I have a hypothesis.
Okay.
I think that Gen Z might be closer to death spiritually, and I think that this makes us more attuned to finding the whys in our life.
Death.
And I think that's why we seek it out more in film, other than us just being psychologically traumatized. And in relation to the film, Nymphomaniac, I think that this is a very clear parallel of how we as a generation come to view life. When I experience event A, I relate it to the random facts I know about fly fishing. Everything that happens to me is symbolic in some way.
You are Joe and Seligman.
Yeah.
Because holy shit, so much happens. So much is talked about.
Before we finish the Glogg, what was your favorite part and did you like it?
The first part that comes to mind is like the very beginning of the first movie where she's talking about being a kid and like her relationship with her dad was just like my favorite thing, honestly.
that
It was
really
so
hurt me.
cute.
Yeah.
It was so soft and safe and like nice. And then it just gets ripped away from you.
And it shows you how much of a real person she is.
Honestly, yeah.
We know in that moment when she mourns her father that she is not a sociopath or anything by any means. She's a real human being with feelings. And she values things other than sex.
Yeah.
Yeah, Thursday, your favorite part?
Arguably, my favorite part was the ending. Where
Really?
Seligman does exactly what you would expect a man to do in that situation. Because it proves that sex is the driving force in men and they don't have big brains.
Yeah.
And they can't decipher between sex and human thoughts and empathy.
Yeah.
I liked that moment as a conclusion. Although it made me very angry, and I was expecting that to happen the whole movie. Okay, I liked it because I remember I brought it up to you at some point in the first film that I was like, this is gonna happen, and you were like, wait. And then as I got to know him as a character more, I was like, that's not gonna happen. And then it did. And so I thought that was like really well done, well written. Because you find yourself almost like feeling like a manipulated person
Yeah.
in that situation. Yeah.
Totally.
It really immersed you.
And I love that Lars von Trier directed this. And when I watch this movie, I think, how can a man have understood this woman's experience so well and made it actually relate to me?
Yeah.
There's not very many movies directed by a man where I can say that.
Right.
Yeah.
But in that last moment, I say,
Yeah.
he knows exactly what's up.
Yes.
And snaps for Lars von Trier
She
for that
still
one.
gets out of the situation in the end.
Which is
she
so slay.
survives.
Yes. Like,
So slay.
Go off.
what's your favorite part?
Yeah, what's your favorite part, Megan?
My favorite part, ever since my very first viewing of this film, I think it's chapter 3. I might be wrong.
What's chapter 3?
It's the one about polyphony. Box piece.
Is it the one?
The one with like the
The
three
one.
guys.
I think I might change my mind because that might be my favorite part.
That is a good part of it.
Ever since my very first viewing of this movie, which was when I was in the 7th grade, I have always met people and related everyone that I've met to this. And previously I've called it a tapestry, as if every person I've met is a thread in a tapestry, but I prefer to view it more as an orchestra, where every person I've met in my life is a different instrument in the orchestra, working in harmony together or in polyphony together to make the piece that is my human experience. And everything about that chapter is so beautifully edited, written. That's the chapter that sold me. When she starts introducing each man and you
Her
already
lovers.
know. Like,
she talks about
yeah.
specifically, these are, if you think about my my main lovers in my life,
Mm-hmm.
and then she goes into the story of these 3 men that she specifically picks out.
Mm-hmm. And relating these men to other things. Like, she relates one of them to, like, a tiger, which I have done, perhaps. But, like, every person I meet, I relate to other things because of clanging, perhaps, what have you. That's the chapter that really sold me. I really saw myself in that chapter in, like, probably 100 different ways. Everything from relating people to other things to just the fact that it was based in music theory. Mm-hmm. And that was my favorite part of the movie. Thank you.
I have nothing more to add to what Megan said other than I agree.
Did we like the movie?
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's end with doing a little harmonization.
Wait, no. Wait,
Glog,
Glog. Wait,
Glog.
but what if we make sounds?
Oh, okay, let's make a sound.
Okay, guys, today I listened to the Tripodcast where Eugene controlled the podcast, and I really enjoyed the segment where they made sounds that haven't been heard before. So we're going to go around in a circle now. Everyone's going to make a sound that they believe hasn't been heard before, and we will end on that note. Megan?
first.
Me first?
Yeah.
Have a lovely night.
Glog.
Glog!
Glog gals.
Glog gals.
Glog gals.
Glog gals.